Hello and welcome. I'm Steve Clemons, editor-at-large of The Hill. Thanks for joining us for our event today, COVID-19, the tech world, and economic resilience. A look at the role technology can play in re-energizing the American economy in the midst of a global pandemic. I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Information Technology Industry Council, for their support of today's conversations. The ongoing significant advances in communication and IT have lifted many, and they've buffered others. And there's all sorts of innovation and scrambling around to make this time work. But at the core of this is that new platforms are out there, and this is all happening during a crushing pandemic. While the past few months have gut-punched the U.S. economy, we've also witnessed a wave of innovation. Digital technology has been embraced at a staggering rate, really staggering rate, from telehealth to automation to new data sharing and video communications platforms. We're all having to learn to do life a little differently. As a new administration prepares to take charge, which technology shifts are here to stay, and how can policymaking keep pace to ensure the American economy retains a competitive edge? We're going to be putting these questions and more in front of our fantastic speakers, but first, a few housekeeping notes. First, you can tweet us, we love tweets, at The Hill Events, using the hashtag #TheHillTech. We're going to be broadcasting live and we'll be taking your questions throughout the program. And as with any live stream, you could experience occasional trouble with the video. I hope you don't. They say that if you refresh the page, it should fix most of the problems. May the force be with you on that. The coronavirus pandemic is revealing harsh truths about the digital divide. My first guest is Jessica Rosenworcel, a commissioner at the Federal Communications, where she is advocating for a nationwide plan to make sure all Americans are connected to the web in order to work and learn. I want to say something about Jessica. We've had a lot of talks about this, and I want the audience to know if your kids or if you have experienced a connection to E-rate, if you've connected, schools, if you've looked at different phases of devices going to students, this is the person who delivered that. So Jessica, great to see you again. Let me ask you, as we talk about, we're back in broadband connectivity, and you and I have discussed this. I feel like we've been talking about it for a very long time. I don't want to age us, but maybe decades. But at that level, when we kind of look at getting everyone online, one of the reasons why it's become so critical in this time is that everyone's had, if you're at work, if you're at school, if you're talking to your family, you need to be in that space, and there are a lot of Americans that aren't there. So what can be done finally to shelve this problem and to get all Americans connected on broadband?
Well, first of all, Steve, thanks for having me. I care deeply about the digital divide, and I think we have work to do to solve it. There was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, when Washington thought broadband was nice to have, not need to have.
Right.
I think this pandemic has conclusively proven that everyone needs an internet connection to have a fair shot at success. Just like you said, it's school, it's work, it's healthcare. So much of our lives, we've migrated online during this pandemic, and we're not going back, because when we get to the other side, we are still going to use this technology. And so right now, I think the single most important thing to do is just to flat out say it. Just like with water, just like with electricity, we need 100% of our households connected to broadband. 100% with water, 100% with electricity, 100% with broadband. We need to make that the national policy, and then make sure federal, state, and local policies all line up to reach 100% of us.
So, I know, Jessica, you're at the FCC, and I want to give our audience an understanding in how the government works. Can you explain to them what powers the FCC does to help get us there? And what do you need the Congress to do? What do you need other players in the spectrum to do to make the vision that you just articulate? Is it a function of money? Is it a function of, state and national partnerships? What are the missing elements to get to the vision you just laid out?
Well, all of the above, but here I'll start this way. The Federal Communications Commission has been around since 1934. That predates the internet by decades. It predates broadband. But it's the nation's agency with responsibility for figuring out how we get communications to everyone, everywhere in this country. And while that challenge might have been basic telephony in years past, I'd say that dial tone for the digital age is broadband. We've got to figure out how to reach all of us. And I think we've got to set that national goal of 100%. We've got to start lining up every program we have in the federal government to serve it. including programs we oversee at the Federal Communications Commission, but also programs that have historically been at the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Commerce. We got to make sure we're all moving in the same direction to serve a 100% goal, because we've got places in rural America and urban America where connectivity is nowhere to be found, where households don't have the internet connections they need for their kids to go to school, to stay in touch with work and family and friends. And we've got to realize there's an enormous amount of lost economic opportunity if we don't figure out how to get that connection there. That's going to take funds, but it's also going to take thinking about our existing programs and making sure they work better together in service of that 100% goal.
I'm going to ask you an uncomfortable question. We talk a lot at the Hill, and you and I have talked more about 5G. 5G is really kind of a placeholder for a lot of stuff. It's a placeholder for big data. It's for sensors, smart cities. You know, I'm learning new catchwords like millimeter wave, which would be part of that, which could really transform a lot of rural connectivity. AI. And so all of this is fitting, you know, there are technological leaps that come along with what a 5G, you know, infrastructure, which is not just moving from 4G to 5G. It's a big, big leap. And I guess the question I have for you in a very friendly way is, do you think our government has the literacy, whether it's in Congress, whether it's in, you know, the various agencies and departments, to sort of help shape and create not only the standards by which we're going to make that leap, because China is going that direction, lots of other places are. Do we have the literacy, the awareness, the understanding of the ethics needs that we have there? I'd just love to take a master class from Jessica Rosenworcel on what we should both be happy about and worried about. But I do worry. I know not everyone follows this as deeply as you do. And so what do we need to do to generate a kind of, you know, public interest literacy on this front?
That's a good question. You know, 5G technology is so much more than the smartphone. We're talking about wireless connectivity to people and things all around us at 100 times the speed we have today, with latency that's radically lower. And so when you get all that connectivity, you get all of this data, it makes things possible with machine learning, with artificial intelligence, with remote surgery, with autonomous vehicles. I mean, we are going to see innovation across the economy that's really amazing. And the rest of the world is keenly aware that potential exists. So there is a rush to make sure that you have 5G available at scale, so that technology and that innovation starts in your economy. And, you know, the United States has got to get in the game, and we've got to start planning at a high level for this technology. I think if there's been one thing the last several years has taught us, is that we've got to figure out how defense interests in 5G, commercial interests in 5G, State Department interests in 5G, all work together in service of that goal. I think we need a whole of government 5G initiative. And when we do, let's also make sure this technology is secure. Because when we connect so many more things in so many more places, we're going to expand the attack surface for cyber events. So let's build it secure from the very start.
So let's make some news here. You might not want to, but why not? I know the FCC is playing a role in part of overseeing at least some of the guidance on Huawei, ZTE, and the American communications infrastructure. Germany has just announced it's not going to play that game. It's not going to go that direction. But it is telling American regulators how it is going to kind of embed oversight and cautions to try to satisfy the needs of Americans on the critical infrastructure side. When it comes to American critical infrastructure, you know, and the fact that so many of the dynamics we're talking about are global and international, transnational, do you think that's going to be a tough equation to make work? You know, if Germany, an ally, is in one place, the United States is in another?
You know, I'm actually really hopeful on this. I think since 2019, when a group of nations gathered in Prague to discuss network vulnerabilities and security principles, we've seen this kind of collective interest in making sure that next generation technologies and networks across the world are secure, and that, you know, we reduce our reliance on equipment that might make our networks subject to those who would want to do us harm. And in the United States, we've taken affirmative steps to take equipment from Chinese vendors like Huawei and ZTE out of our networks. We've certainly encouraged our allies to do the same. But I think going forward, it's important to remember we shouldn't do this alone. I mean, the United States has about a quarter of the world's gross domestic product. If we lock arms with our allies on this issue, I think we're going to be an unstoppable force. And I think we'll do a lot of good because we'll make sure that the next generation of network technology is less susceptible to the kind of surveillance that we're worried is coming out of some new Chinese equipment.
Let me ask you, finally, Jessica, I'm going to be talking to Jason Oxman in a bit, from the information technology industry that supported today's program. I want to be very transparent about that. But they've issued a new brief for the new administration coming in. They talk a lot about things. They talk about cybersecurity. They talk about immigration and the need to bring talented people in the country. They talk about, investments in sort of a 5G for all plan. But one of the things they also talk about is the ongoing need to upskill Americans, to train and educate in STEM. And there continues to be this gap in this country. And I'm fascinated by that because this is not, something that's new. I'm interested in whether you have insights because you've been so involved with E-rate. You are the coiner of the term, the homework gap. How do we navigate our basically incumbent homegrown upskilling in the STEM area that can bolster our place, Americans' place in the tech picture?
One of the things I think we really have to focus on is diversity in STEM leadership. If you can see it, you can be it. It's really true. But I will tell you that I don't think our leadership when it comes to science, technology, engineering, and math is sufficiently diverse. And I think we've got to work on that. We can't just say it's a pipeline problem and, absolve ourselves of doing something in the here and now. We've got to make a real effort to promote and amplify the voices of diverse actors in STEM fields, because I think we have the potential for inspiring a lot more minds going forward that way.
Well, FCC Commissioner Jessica Rosenworcel, I feel like every time we have these conversations, we got to tack them together. I feel like I'm getting lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, lesson 4, and how to create a smarter communications infrastructure. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I hope you'll come back.
Yeah, thank you for having me.